Hey, everybody. I want to welcome you to this week's episode of Business Insights with Matt Milia. And I'm super excited because I have a superstar on here today that's going to help you really grow your business when it comes to getting the best leads, getting the best opportunities, especially if you're in real estate and especially if you like investor deals. But before we go too deep into that, first, I'm going to cue my intro. Welcome to Business Insights with Matt Milia. I'm your host, Matt Milia, and in this podcast, we'll talk about the real, raw, uncut business success secrets you won't find anywhere else. Follow my journey from entry level to CEO. We discuss real actionable items you can plug into your business right away. To subscribe to our weekly top tips, you can go to www.mattpodcast.com and join our community of elite high-level performers. And if you're interested in our inside sales company, you can go to www.appointmentstoday.com to jump on a free strategy call. And now, stay tuned for our podcast. All right. What's happening, Drew? How are you?
Hey, thanks for having me on, man. Not much. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for coming on. It's been a long time overdue. And for everyone that is, for everyone that doesn't know a little bit about yourself, you've got a pretty amazing company that you started. Tell everybody a little bit about that.
Yeah, currently right now we're working on our company, leadzolo.com. So Lead Zolo, we are a lead distributor. We're basically an ad agency, and we generate off-market motivated seller leads for real estate investors and real estate wholesalers. So that's kind of the niche that we doubled down on, and we're putting all of our attention on right now. So yeah, it's been going really, really well.
That's awesome. I'm excited to hear a little bit more about Lead Zolo. So what's the community that you serve primarily?
Yeah, the community we're serving are wholesalers mostly. So wholesalers and real estate investors, definitely this little sub community in the real estate arena, where these guys are really just looking for off-market deals that they can get below market, and then get a contract locked up on and flip it over to a fund. A lot of them have different tools in their tool belts, such as, maybe they're flippers, maybe they like to hotel it, maybe they just like to add doors to their portfolio. But what these guys specifically are looking for are motivated sellers that don't want to go through the process of listing their property and are willing to take a discounted cash offer to do so. And so that's how they make their money, is kind of in that spread between the cash offer they can get a property for and the retail value for that property.
I love that. I wish we had the video too that you had. We actually probably could air the video and
Yeah.
put it up there. But you obviously, so you were at a huge event recently. Tell everybody a little bit about, that event and what was it all about?
Yeah, sure. So the community is really focused around sales, right? It's all about sales and being really, really good at sales, because really what you're doing is you're offering somebody, 60 cents on the dollar for the largest asset they'll ever own in their life. So there's a part of getting in front of prospects and leads, who are at the right time and willing to do that. But then the other side of it is sales. So the event we went to was very interesting. There were about 500 people in the room. And what the event was focused around was this whole like boiler room idea. So everybody that came to the event, they would be, an influencer would go up on stage. They'd talk about their process, their sales process, or whatever it might be. And then everybody in the room were provided leads. And so they were able to call the leads right there in the room and start practicing these sales processes that the influencers and these big guys were teaching them on stage. So it was really cool. It was really great. We had the privilege of being asked to be a lead provider, lead vendor for the event. So we did that. And then partway through the event, on the last day, the organizer of the event came up to me and basically said, listen, we're going to put all the big guys, all the big names on stage, and we're only going to give them 30 minutes. And what we want to do is give them like as hot a leads as we can get them. So, and see if one of these guys can close a lead live on stage in a 30-minute time cap, kind of like this, a competition between these sales guys.
Oh,
So
it's awesome.
Yeah, so I was super excited. I'm quickly trying to, get campaigns turned up and live leads coming in as fast as humanly possible, so we get these guys some leads. And sure enough, that's exactly what we did. So they went up on stage. We generated some leads over that hour, plus live leads were coming in. So I was on stage with them, handing the guys like my cell phone as as leads were coming in live on my phone, and it was awesome. There were 6 people on stage. 5 of them got leads. Unfortunately, we weren't prepared for the 6th person, so we were just trying getting them one-offs. But we ended up only generating 25 leads in that time frame, and of the 25 leads, we got 5 verbal yeses to contracts. 2 of them, actually, the contract was sent and signed. Of the 2 that was sent and signed, one of them was a $1.8 million triplex, and they accepted a $1 million cash offer over the phone in, I think it was 16 minutes or something like that. Plus, the guy who closed them had also sent them the DocuSign and got it signed as well while on stage. So it was just a phenomenal experience for our company to showcase our leads, but it was an incredible moment for everybody in that crowd to really see what was possible in this industry.
That's insane, though. I mean, just kind of quantifying that. So these guys are offering. So they offered $1 million. Now that was also sight unseen, so they didn't see the property.
That's right. So,
Wow.
they're lucky enough to have some software, so they are able to see some comps. So, this guy has a working relationship with a fund in that specific area. It was in the Bronx, actually, in New York, and there were some comparable sells within the last 90 days, same square footage, same kind of triplex idea. So he knew what funds were picking them up for in that area, and getting an offer accepted $1 million for what was, Zillow was saying 1.8 million as estimate, gave him a
Okay.
lot of room to negotiate with the fund. So he was very comfortable picking that up sight unseen.
Wow, that's pretty cool. So, I
Yeah.
mean, it's a hell of a risk too for the investor. I mean, picking it up without even seeing the property. I mean, do you what are your thoughts on how do they minimize that risk, or is it just because they're paying so little, it doesn't matter to them?
Sorry, for the fund or for the wholesaler?
No, for the whole, well, so for the wholesaler, for the person that, oh, well, okay, so so we'll take a step back. These guys are buying this at a wholesale amount, but then they're finding somebody to come in and actually pick up the paper. Is that
Right. So typically what they do
okay?
is the contract they have the seller sign is a contract to basically give them ownership of the property, but it gives them 30 days to secure financing. So
Ah,
some of them are 30 days, some of them are 10 days, whatever it might be.
mhm.
But they give themselves that window. So in this case, RJ had 30 days to find a fund to purchase what he had an agreement on for $1 million. Now, at the end of the 30 days, if he doesn't have a purchaser, he can let that go, and there'll be some sort of compensation in there for the seller to have been tied up for 30 days. It's not very much; it's usually a couple $100s. Um, and so that's how they do it. They're very quick to get a contract, and then it gives them some time to sell the deal on the back end.
Okay, that makes more sense because and of course, I know I wasn't the only one thinking it. People that are watching might be thinking that this guy had $1 million just wired it to him sight unseen.
Right.
Now it makes more sense.
Yeah, and to help contextualize, actually, so to get into that, yeah, he doesn't have any money on scene. He needs to sell it on the back end, and it's not like he's going to turn around and sell it for 1.8 or anything like that. He's probably going to look to move it pretty quickly. So, like, if he can find a fund that's going to offer 1.1, which would be a pretty easy ask, especially when at retail it's 1.8.
Yeah,
He's done. So, but like you think about it, he spent 16 minutes on the phone with the seller.
right.
Say he spends 2 hours talking to funds, he made 6 figures in 2.5 hours worth of work.
It's
So
pretty great. People
yeah,
write books about stuff like that.
I'd take that all day long.
Right, right. So his objective and his goal, of course, is to get them to say yes to his offer, and then, of course, if someone comes by and says they're going to pay 1.1, so yeah, he makes 100,000. He pays the $1 million out of the proceeds from the investor, and then he just turns it over to the investor.
Yeah, and it's actually structured different than that too, because with the issues with real estate and having to like you need to hold real estate for a certain amount of days before you can sell it.
Mm,
What actually happens is he just sells that piece of contract to the fund for, and then the fund pays him the difference. So he's selling $1 million contract for 1.1 to the fund. The fund's paying the $1 million to the original seller, and the difference above that, he gets paid out as an assignment fee, is how it's structured.
Got it. Okay. So he's disclosing to them essentially what he's making on the deal, and they're obviously totally fine with that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's awesome. So Lead Zolo now, I mean, obviously, of course, you're like the master of PPC. We know that. So Google, YouTube, you're running advertising there. What are some challenges that you see with folks that run ads and they're just not getting traffic, or they're not getting results? Like, I know this is your bread and butter. So what are your thoughts on people who try to do it themselves, but they're just not getting it? What would you tell them?
Right. So this is I could talk at lengths for this. There's
I
Lead
figured you
Zolo.
could, so I
Yeah.
asked.
Between my business partner and I, between the two of us, we own about 5 or 6 companies now in this space. Not in the wholesaling space, but in the providing leads for industry space.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, this is a very loaded question. So I'll try and unpack a couple of different things here. So first off, I think that there's a poor expectation of online marketing, and like there's no difference in being marketing or online marketing, right? Like there just happens to be online in front of something, that if it's Google or Facebook or something like that. It's the same as billboard marketing or commercial marketing or whatever you want to call it. It's all exactly the same thing. The idea is you're paying X amount of money for a click or an impression, and you have to be able to monetize that impression or click or whatever the cost is of that marketing effort in a way that you have a profitable return. So most people look at this and their whole objective is, how do I get the cheapest leads possible? So let's talk real estate in your case. So
Yeah.
I'm a realtor. I want seller lead, right? And so it's like the first objective goes to, how can I get the cheapest lead? And I think fundamentally that is the wrong question. I think that's where 99% of people start, and of those 99%, 99% of them finish as well, because they're just so focused on this one question of, how do I have such better marketing that I can acquire customers cheaper than my competition?
Mm-hmm.
And that thinking is a race to the bottom. It's a race to failure. The question people should be asking is, how much or what is the largest lifetime value I can make out of my customers, so that I can pay the most for a customer in my industry and in my area? Because the company that can afford to pay the most per lead for marketing wins, absolutely dominates. So the question isn't how do I get them cheaper, is how do I monetize my leads more so that they are worth more to me, so that I am able to afford a more expensive lead and go into that marketplace, overbid all of my competition, which will drive costs up and make it so that my competition cannot afford to advertise. That's how you dominate in any industry. That is the formula for dominating your area. So that's what people need to be focused on. And so instead of looking at cost per click and landing page conversion rates and all these kinds of things, which are very important in their own little vacuum, what's most important is, what am I doing with that lead? So in terms of a realtor, are you capitalizing and focusing on getting leads in the high income zip codes in your area? Right? So that'd be the first question. Are you specifically targeting leads where they're seller leads, so that you're also going to get a higher percentage of the buyer volume on the back end of that, right? How are you increasing the volume? If somebody has a a $450,000 house, how do you turn that volume to 900? Well, you're also their buyer agent. So that would be one way to do it in that industry. In my industry as wholesaling, they have a lot more. So it's like, okay, so you could be a wholesaler, you could be really good at flipping to a fund. But what if you learned how to actually rehab and flip a house on your own? That gives you a different entry price point into a lead. What if you also learned how to do novations and partnered up with a company that would come in and do renovations and split the proceeds with the person? Great. What if you then also had a realtor license so that you could list the property if that's possible? So now what you're doing is, of the 100 leads that you brought in, where your conversion rate prior was 3%, you're converting 3 out of 100 leads. And so now you're all worried about the cost per 100 leads. Well, instead of worrying about the cost per 100 leads, instead of being able to convert 3 of them, how can you convert 4 of them? 4% of them? How can you convert 5% of them? How can you convert 6% of them? So you're not cutting your cost per lead in half, you're cutting your conversion. You're doubling your conversion, which is essentially costing your cost per acquisition in half. And you're doing that by adding tools to your tool belt. You're doing that by finding different ways to monetize your leads, which increases the lifetime value of every lead that comes into your pipeline. So that's where people need to be focused on business. That's what I focus on in all of my businesses, is not how do I get people cheaply in the front? It's how expensive is it to get people into the front, and how do I monetize better in the back end? And that's how people should look at marketing. It should never be how do I get the cheapest lead? It's how do I get the highest quality lead that I have the highest chance to convert, and the lead that will convert into the highest dollar amount for me.
It's funny that we're talking about, cheap leads versus the high quality leads, because I'll never forget when I was, and I mean, I still drive traffic, I'm still running advertising, but one of the things that I've learned was that I was using, solely I was using Facebook for a while. And Facebook, I will say Facebook hands down gives you really good low dollar amount leads. You get lots of them. You'll get tons of leads. I mean, I was generating leads at one point for $4 or $5. And I will say that there are certain niches and industries it works really, really well for. What I found in real estate is it, for some reason, doesn't work as well. I found personally a ton of success with retargeting on Facebook. That I feel is amazing. But the new leads on Facebook, you'll get a lot of them. They won't cost much, but the conversion is very challenging. And I've noticed that Google, YouTube, I don't know if have you ever tested TikTok? Are you familiar with TikTok leads?
I am more recently familiar with TikTok, yes.
Have you seen, what are your thoughts on TikTok? I'm curious.
So yeah, I can give a couple of thoughts here. So first talk about just real estate leads. I think what the thing is that real estate leads, it's a long journey, right? It's a long journey to go from I need to move, or I'm thinking about moving, to getting a realtor and selling your house. That's a very long process. So what that means is the top of the funnel is really, really wide. There's just so many people at the top of the funnel, and it just takes so long before they come into the bottom.
Right.
So with Facebook, and the same as TikTok, your targeting options, the way you're getting in front of people, you're just casting a really wide net. And so you're putting ads that are inspiring people who might be thinking about it to come in. So you're getting really low cost per lead because you're getting a very high engagement rate, because there's a large portion of the audiences that you're getting in front of are resonating with your message. For example, what is the most common funnel for realtors is a get a home valuation, right? So I have no interest in selling my home right now, but I'm pretty interested to see how much it's worth based on how market trends have been going over the last few months and things like that. So I could be somebody who came into your funnel. I have zero interest in selling. You'll never pick me up and take me on as a client. I have an agent who I'll use for the rest of my life, but I will come into your funnel because there's potentially something you offer. So that's where the volume and the lower lead dollars come in. So it's a high volume game. Now on Google, which I will, just for everybody that's listening, when I say Google, I'm also referring to YouTube. YouTube is owned by Google. It's the same advertising platform and targeting that you use for both. Google has always been, it's actually getting a little further away from it now, but for the sake of this conversation, is always been and is best at is bottom of funnel targeting. So with Google, you can get way more microscopic with how you're targeting people and what level of the funnel they're in, what their awareness state is, and you can get in front of them right when they are specifically looking for an agent. You can get in front of terms like, who is the best agent in my area? What a great time to put your value proposition in front of somebody, right?
Right.
So the cost is way more. The cost per click, or the CPM, or however you want to discuss it, compare the two, the cost is going to be way more. But the reason is that the conversion rate on those leads are going to be 10x, if not more. So if you're focused on cost per click or webinar or landing page conversion rate or cost per lead, whatever you consider a lead, yeah, there's going to be a vast difference. But you need to go farther down your sales process and evaluate the leads further down. Like, what was your cost per listing? That would be a very interesting metric that I would throw at you guys. I use the same thing in my business. It's a different term for wholesaling, but for a realtor, never look at your marketing as cost per lead. Maybe, and even this, I would shy. There's a better metric, but I think a great metric would be, what is your cost per listing? That's something you should focus on. So who cares if the lead's $300 or $3?
Right.
If it takes four $300 leads to list, that's a $1,200 listing, right? But if it takes 1,000 $3 leads to list, that's $3,000 per listing. It's literally costing you more than double. So that's what we focus on in Lead Zolo. Is we focus on just delivering the highest quality leads. So you're spending less time working lower quality leads and really just focusing on business opportunities. And so for realtors, you should be focused on working listing opportunities, not focused on working people who are curious what the value of their house was because the market's going crazy.
Right. Well, for everyone that's watching, if you want an amazing podcast aside from Business Insights, go to the businessofwholesaling.com. Really great tactical, strategic, and you guys give some tactics away too, right, Drew? I mean, you guys aren't like, you tell people, kind of give them an idea of certain things they can do to grow their business.
Yeah. So Business of Wholesaling is really focused on that. My vision for Business of Wholesaling is I want people to go there and not just be a hoorah type of podcast where they're all inspired and motivated at the end. I want them to go there with a pen and paper. And so everybody that I ask them intimate details about their business. I want to know how much they're paying for their marketing. What is their cost per lead? What is their cost per transaction? What is their ROI? What is specifically is their sales process? What specifically is their dispo process? So that people have actionable takeaways. And that's really the whole focus of it.
You asked them that on the podcast?
Absolutely.
That's awesome. That is super. Well, that's cool because then then people can kind of compare what they're doing and then they can say, oh, this is, maybe things are good, or this is where I need to maybe fix something. Because a lot of times folks are looking at, they look at they just look at like what their cost per lead is, and that's as far as they go. And if you're just looking at what your cost per lead is, I mean, just like you said earlier in the podcast, I mean, it's going to be a race to the bottom. You're doing the same thing that everyone else is. And yeah, I mean, it's important to know your metrics, but that's a very surface level metric to know. You've got to know what the cost per acquisition is. And then I also look at too, I do what's called ALTV, average lifetime value. And I look at that on like now, granted, with what I'm offering, of course, is, agency related inside sales, marketing, like that whole thing. I mean, you look at it a little bit differently as if you were a real estate agent. You're going to look at ALTV as maybe, does this person come back to you as a return client? What advice would you give to folks, with you being, an expert in the marketing space? What advice would you give to folks to get people to come back and redo business? Aside from doing a really good job, are there like certain marketing messages or things that you've found that have been successful to get people to come back with repeat business?
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, our agency implements a lot of it. So there's two things, and maybe we'll come back to it, maybe we won't. But the one thing is there's two key KPIs that I focus on in every industry that is very important, and we can talk about those as well. But to answer your question that you just asked, how to get repeat business, and I would also lump that into how to get referral business. There's only one way to do that, and that's through relationship. So now it's hard to scale relationship building. It's hard to scale depth of relationship. It's hard to do those things, especially when you're in a very transactional industry like real estate. It's nice to talk about people who come back and repeat business, but it's not like, it's not like Amazon. They're not coming back, every 48 hours like my wife. Yeah, exactly.
Right.
So it's really hard to maintain a long-term relationship to ensure they come back to you, but there are ways to do it. So in your industry specifically, I would suggest the number one thing you always do when somebody does business with you is you give them a gift that they're just not aware of, right? So, and I know there's kind of like the whole cliche fruit basket on the counter when you sell a new home. People expect that, right? People just plain expect that. So my first thing would be, how can you give, every time you sell a house, how can you give that family a very personalized gift? And don't do it on the day they purchase the home, do it 3 weeks later, right?
Mm,
And make it specific. For example, I was just brought in a toy for my child, in a different language, because the realtor is she's very big on children being brought up multilingual, and so are we. We think it's very interesting. And she just showed, I've lived here for over a year now, and she literally showed up, and it's a cheap toy. It was $20, but it was a building block toy because she knew it was near my daughter's birthday time, and so she wanted to bring her something that was very specific to her based on conversations we had. It wasn't a templated like, oh, here's your birthday card with a $25 gift card to Starbucks,
right,
right? It
right.
was something very specific to me to go, I remember you and I remember your family and I know you. The second thing I
Mm,
would say is add them to all of your social profiles. Ask to take a picture of them in front of their new home and ask permission to post it on your Facebook page or Instagram or whatever it might be.
right.
You're tying the person to your brand. What you're doing is you're forcing them to be an advocate. Their face is now on your brand. They now have a social obligation to talk highly of you. So that's going to keep it there. They're now going to see, because they're on there and they've been tagged through the coming months and years, they will see the rest of your posts, and that's how you keep in contact. I would also keep a very detailed CRM, and I wouldn't necessarily send a gift every single year, but I would keep track of major milestones, and I wouldn't just do the Christmas card every year, but maybe one year you do a Christmas card, maybe another year you do a birthday. But again, you keep it very personalized so that it feels like an actual relationship. It doesn't feel transactional.
I love that. And it's funny because, so, of course, I also teach on some of these things too. One of the things I always say is to do an interview with them, literally
Mhm.
interview them, so that, because it's not just a, and it's very interesting how you associated the picture of them with also your brand. And you're right, but it also, now video is even so much more powerful, because now it becomes a brand asset where you're not just taking the picture. You've also got somebody who, hey, tell me a little bit about the process. What'd you think? Now, obviously, if it was a really challenging deal and they're just not thrilled about what happened during that deal, you probably want to stay away from the video and just be thankful for your picture. But if you had somebody that, you were able to help them negotiate, help them get into a better situation, I mean, absolutely, I think doing the video is crucial and key. And, I mean, hey, you're the, the expert at YouTube and Google. So, I mean, videos do very well, especially testimonial videos. I'm sure you would agree with that.
Oh, I would totally agree. Any business in the world, I would tell you to interview all of your clients and make a montage of the video and retarget
Right.
with it all day long.
Right.
Absolutely.
Well, and I think too, the biggest thing, and I love the idea about the personalized gift. And you even said earlier that there was no way of pulling you away. I'm sure that personalized gift helped cement that, and not that it was not that it's the dollar amount of the gift, because I mean, in a lot of cases, if you throw money at a situation, that's all fine and well, but really that only takes you so far. Throwing money at a situation doesn't necessarily, like, they actually took the time to learn something about you, your family, your beliefs, and gave a gift that was something meaningful for your child. That's amazing.
Yeah, and as just another really quick example, we had a client who got really excited once. We were scaling their business, and he literally said in an email, and I'll swear he cursed in it as well, but it was, I'm so excited to scale to the moon, right? And that
Right.
was his, and it became this kind of joke where we would joke about scaling to the moon,
Right.
and he would also make like SpaceX jokes and things like that. So
That's
one
fun.
one a part of, he's been a client for a few years now, but we just decided, we were just in a meeting and he sent us another referral, and we're like, how do we thank him? Like, we're not going to send him a gift card, we're not going to PayPal him some money, like, what do we do?
Right.
And we ended up doing was going on Etsy, I believe, and getting like a personalized astronaut in a SpaceX suit, and we got pictures of his like profile pictures and stuff, and had the artist actually like remake his face on like this bobblehead SpaceX suit thing. And then of course we got like the golden embed on the bottom says scale to the moon.
That's awesome.
Right. And there's nothing more personal than that. Like it's, you would never be able to send that to another client. They just wouldn't get it. So yeah, it's very interesting.
Well, before we close things out, Drew, and by the way, for everybody that's on again, definitely check out businessofwholesaling.com. You want a great podcast that gives you actual action items. And that's something for me, Drew, is action items, giving people action items to help them grow their business and scale their business and take it to the next level. Because so many times people talk about theory, they talk about, just basic stuff that you can't actually plug into your business. But was there anything that you wanted to add for everybody who was watching?
Yeah, the last thing I just need to throw it out because I'm really trying to send it home with a lot of our clients and stuff lately.
Take all the time you need. Go ahead.
The only two things you need to be focused on in terms of your marketing and your business is ROI of the channel and sales per man hour by channel. It's a very important metric. It's probably too deep for this conversation. We could talk about that later, but I don't think enough people focus on sales per man hour. They may look at a lead source as a cheap lead source, but the wear and tear on your salesperson having to work, 40 times as many leads, because they're cheap and they're worth it. That salesperson or yourself as an agent, you're only closing so many houses. You're only listing so many houses because you're spending 80% of your time working leads. Well, I would challenge everybody watching to measure how many hours do you spend on those leads and divide that by the dollar amount that those leads have got you and see what is your sales per man hour per marketing channel and see where you're wasting your time. Because I'll tell you right now, if you have a sales team, the guys who are making $20,000 a month and closing deals every week are a lot more inspired than the guy closing one deal every 2 months, but working just as many hours because he's getting the crappy leads to work. So where would you rather be as an agent? Would you rather be working less leads, even though they're more expensive, or would you be working a whole pile of leads and making less deals?
So. And it's funny you should say that because a lot of times, with what we do, we do a lot of cold calling. So, we're working a lot of leads, but I will tell you that the agents that, and you said sales per man hour per channel, which was very interesting. The way I look at marketing, I think it's called the howitzer method, or there's a methodology where, you're basically blasting into all different channels. You're testing to see which one works, which one's going to give you the best return. And then those are the areas that you double down on.
Right.
It's funny because when I talk to people, and generally speaking, and I'll just use real estate agents as an example, because I'd say probably about 60% of my clients, almost 70, are real estate agents. Most of them, the one thing that they always tell me is they're like, oh yeah, like, so where do you get a lot of your leads? Oh, lots of referrals. And I'm like, okay. And like, well, what made you decide to reach out to me? Well, the referrals have slowed down. Well, because the market has self-corrected. So of course, when that happens, that lead well dries up, which means guys like you and me that have the super high quality leads or have the calling solutions intact, it makes a world of difference. And, referrals are great, of course, but you only are going to get so many of those in a given day, in a given opportunity. And it kind of keeps your business capped, if that makes sense. What are your thoughts?
Right. I agree. So I very much agree. I think everybody should have multi-channels. I think I use a risk metric when analyzing businesses as well. And a part of a risk metric is where your lead's coming from. And it's literally just based off channel. So if you have one channel, you have a risk metric of 10. If you have two marketing channels, you have a risk metric of 5, 3, 3.3, 4, 2.5. So like I definitely, diversification across marketing channels is very important. But my point on sales per man hour is to just make sure, like, it seems to be overlooked a lot. Now, in terms of cold calling, I wouldn't look at the hours if I was hiring you to do my cold calling, I'm looking at the hours you guys are spending for. That's part of the cost per lead for me,
Right.
because I don't have to worry about it. I don't have to manage those guys. That's the whole point of outsourcing cold calling, is that you don't have to deal with it.
Right.
So, but for me is, okay, if you did cold calling, let's just make up some examples here. Cold calling I spent $50,000 on last year, and it made me $200,000. It was a 4x ROI. Facebook ads I spent $50,000 on last year, and I made $250,000 on. So it was a 5x ROI. So the Facebook ads technically have a higher ROI than the cold caller ads. The difference being, it was 1 in 20, and I'm just making this up. I don't know what the metrics are on cold calling for real estate, but 1 in 20 of the leads that came in of the cold calling leads turned into a listing, where it was 1 in 60 leads of the Facebook leads turned into a listing. So although the cost per Facebook lead was less than a third than the cost per a cold call lead, the conversion rate, it was actually, we're spending more than 3 to 3.5 times on Facebook leads than we are working cold call leads. So who has calculated the cost per man? Who has calculated how much that man hours cost? Right?
Yep.
So nobody's calculating that. So now it's like, okay, see, a salesperson's dealing with all of your listings. Well, there's the guy working Facebook leads who's making 1 listing every other month, or the guy who's working the cold call leads is listing 2 listings a month. The cold guy working the cold calling leads is always going to be getting better at his craft and better salesperson and more eager. He's the guy showing up on time, if not early. He's the one calling old past leads and getting all gunged up and gung ho on a Friday afternoon. He's crushing it because he gets to see consistent success of his work. The guy working the lower quality leads, even though technically it's a higher ROI, we have a hard time maintaining the salesperson, right? He went through a whole month of talking to leads and everybody telling him to take a hike. So he's frustrated. He's showing up late to work. He's taking long lunches. He's got the migraine every Friday afternoon and wants to go home early. And now it's like, okay, so maybe there was a higher return on those cost, ad spend to profit, to revenue. But what was the cost of my business? What was the cost of the hours that had to work those leads? What is the cost of a new hire and training, right? And having to turn over a new salesperson every quarter because they're tired of working those leads? What is the cost of your time to have to spend with somebody, to have to keep to motivate them, to have to keep posting for new jobs, to have to keep training, right? So it's just one of those things where on the surface level, it had the higher ROI. So most business owners would double down on that channel, where it could actually be killing your company from the inside out.
Man, I mean, that was like a bomb drop right there. That was awesome. And that was because regardless of the medium, even if we took cold calling out, we say, okay, Facebook compared to Google, and frankly, I mean, Google blew my business up. If it wasn't for Google, my business would have literally tanked. And it was funny because I hired a marketing company. This was like 5 years ago, going on almost 6 now. So, I mean, it was a while ago. We were getting tons of Facebook leads, and the leads were coming in. I mean, they were good leads, but they were still in the infancy stages of needing inside sales help. They didn't know what they didn't know. Where I went on Google, and man, and I would use this example is with like Facebook leads, people are coming to you with a cup of coffee in hand. With Google, they're coming to you with a credit card in hand. Like they're ready to buy something because they're no longer in a discovery phase. They're still in that mode of, okay, I did some due diligence. I looked up my research. I did what I needed to do. And now I'm ready to make a move. No, and I mean, obviously, of course, not all Google, YouTube, pay-per-click leads are going to be gold. I mean, they're still their leads, their online leads, just like anything else. But again, those higher quality leads, I mean, in my opinion, make a world of difference.
Absolutely. You couldn't pay me to sit here and talk to leads all day long. If you gave me a list of 4 people who have a booked appointment on my calendar and you want me to sell them, I'd take those calls all day long, because at least they're motivated and want to be here.
Right.
So yeah.
And even the leads, like even the like the Facebook or the TikTok leads. And I mean, TikTok I've heard is kind of comparable to Facebook. I've heard I've heard different, opinions on it. And again, guys, for everyone that's watching, I'm not saying that Facebook leads are they're not good. I mean, there are some industries that Facebook leads absolutely kill it in. You just have to know with your industry, like more or less consumer facing leads. Like if I was doing like bathtub installs, or we're doing like even roofing leads, I've noticed that like the Facebook leads can be decent. For real estate, they're really early in the process. That's what I've noticed. Again,
Yeah.
I know that, and I also feel like with Facebook, the more complex the sale is, or the more complex the product is, the more of a challenge you have of obtaining the highest of quality leads, and PPC generally outdoes them, because these people actually actively searched for what they actively searched for your product, opposed to Facebook, they just sort of stumbled into it. So
Yeah, you just have to have a different process for it. And my quick comment on it, and this is a personal comment, I'm not quoting statistics, even though I could. Facebook and TikTok, people are on there to waste time, right?
right,
You're watching 30-second videos where you're sitting on the couch and a commercial's on, assuming anybody watching here watches cable.
right,
When you're on Facebook, it's because you're in a bank line. Like, it's like you are literally on those things to pass time. On Google, you're going to Google to do research, typically, right? You're actively looking for something. You're not just trying to mind-numbingly get through time. And same with YouTube. People go to YouTube to consume long-form content. So they're engaged, where Facebook and TikToks, the whole purpose of them is to help people disengage. So for me, that's how I see the difference. Is I can put a more articulate marketing message in front of somebody on Google or on YouTube, because they are more engaged and they're going to pay more attention to that marketing message. Where on Facebook and Instagram, you're using a disruptive style marketing. You're flashing fingers and hey, pay attention to me. And so you might get their attention for a second, and maybe they fill out a form, but 17 seconds later, they've forgotten about it, because the whole platform's design is to help you disengage. So.
That's brilliant. It makes complete sense. I love it. Well, Drew, thank you so much for jumping on. You gave tons of value. And again, for everybody that's watching, make sure to go over to businessofwholesaling.com. You're going to get, and Drew, that's where your podcast is, correct? Is it businessofwholesaling.com?
That's correct. Businessofwholesaling.com is my podcast website. We just
Perfect.
launched last week, so it's very exciting. LeadZolo.com is my agency for motivated off-market seller leads. If you're in the industry.
Awesome. Well, so I got Lead Zolo up there. We got businessofwholesaling.com. Look at that, everybody. See, got it flashing them both. So awesome. There you go. One way or the other, you're going to get a hold of Drew, and he's going to help blow up your business. So Drew, thank you again for jumping on. For everybody that's watching, we'll see you same channel, same time next week. Thanks, Drew.
Awesome.
See you, everybody.